Some wrong doors lead to the right rooms. Zariah Lane didn't know it yet, but her entire life was about to change. Because of a leaking pipe, a borrowed hotel key, and one cold-eyed stranger who wasn't supposed to be there either. That evening had started like any other. Until it didn't. Zariah was standing in ankle-deep water, holding her phone with one hand and her ruined shoes in the other. Her apartment, a tiny third-floor unit on the edge of Raleigh's downtown, had betrayed her. A pipe burst somewhere behind the wall, and now her mattress was soaked, her laptop was fried, and her last clean outfit was floating toward the closet door. She let out a slow sigh. Everything she owned could fit into 2 duffel bags, and tonight, even those weren't dry. The maintenance line said they wouldn't come until the morning. She was cold, tired, broke, and on the edge of tears. So when her friend Kyla, who worked front desk at the Golden Pelican Resort, called back and said, "Girl, I pulled some strings. Come here. I got you for the night." Zariah didn't even ask questions. She just packed what she could, wrapped her dead laptop in a towel, and grabbed an Uber using her last $10. The Golden Pelican was a 5-star beachside resort tucked into the outer edge of Charleston's luxury district. It was the kind of place where parking attendants wore white gloves and lobby floors sparkled like glass. Zariah had never stepped foot in it before, much less imagined sleeping in one of its rooms. Kyla greeted her at the side entrance with a sheepish smile. "I shouldn't be doing this. Room 509 is under maintenance, technically, but it's clean, the bed works, and you need a break. Take it. Don't argue." "I won't," Zariah whispered, hugging her. "I owe you." Kyla handed her a key card and a tiny wink. "You owe me a whole paycheck. Go." Zariah didn't argue. She was too tired. The elevator chimed softly as she stepped onto the 5th floor. Everything smelled like lemon polish and fresh linens. It felt too fancy for someone like her. Still, she dragged her duffel down the hallway, eyes squinting at the golden room numbers until she found it. Room 509. She slid the card in. Green light. Door clicked open. Inside, it looked perfect. Modern furnishings. Marble sink. Fluffy white towels folded like swans on the bed. Zariah kicked off her shoes, peeled off her damp jeans, and grabbed one of the hotel robes hanging by the bathroom door. The fabric felt soft and warm against her skin, like something stolen from a better life. She didn't notice the tailored blazer folded neatly over the armchair. She didn't see the suitcase propped beside the minibar, and she definitely didn't see the watch resting near the sink. Zariah just dropped her bag by the window, flopped onto the bed, pulled the comforter over her shoulder, and let her exhaustion win. 30 minutes later, Sterling Cole returned to room 509 with his earpiece still buzzing in his left ear. "Tell the Singapore office to move the call to Thursday. I'll review the report in the morning." "No, I'm not staying longer than—" He paused. Something was off. He stepped into the room, lowered the volume on the call, and quietly shut the door. There was a woman asleep in his bed. Long, dark curls spilled over the pillow. A hotel robe draped over slim shoulders. Her body was curled up like she'd been there all day. He frowned, then slowly backed toward the desk. His suitcase was still there. Laptop untouched. Nothing seemed stolen. He hung up the call without another word. Then, in his usual clipped tone, said, "You're in the wrong room." Zariah's eyes snapped open. She sat up too fast, blinking at him like she wasn't sure if he was real. "Wait. What? Who are you?" Sterling crossed his arms. "Who are you?" "This is my room." Zariah blinked, reached for the card on the side table, and held it up. "Room 509. That's what I was given." He walked over, checked it. The code matched. The card was real. He pulled out his phone and called the front desk. Kyla picked up. Sterling spoke without emotion. "There's a guest in my room. She has a valid key card." Pause. Then, "Her name is Zariah Lane. Ring any bells?" Long silence. Then a panicked voice. "Oh my God, I gave her the wrong room. She was supposed to be in 409. I'm so sorry, Mr. Cole. I didn't realize 509 was active. No other rooms? We're full. I can call another property if you prefer. Sterling looked at Zariah, who was now standing at the foot of the bed, holding her duffel and looking both furious and humiliated. No, he muttered. It's fine. He ended the call and walked to the other side of the bed, pulled the comforter up neatly, and sat down stiffly. You can stay. One night. Don't touch anything. Stay on your side. Zariah let out a dry laugh. Believe me, that's the plan. She grabbed a pillow, turned away from him, and lay back down. Both of them stared at opposite walls. Hours passed. Neither of them spoke, but neither of them slept either. Sterling stared at the ceiling, mind racing through schedules, meetings, and everything he was trying to avoid by being here anonymously. Zariah stared at the dark corner of the window, wondering how her life always seemed to fall apart right before things got better. Finally, she turned her head slightly. You okay? She asked quietly. He didn't move. No. She didn't ask why. And he didn't explain. But something in that small exchange softened the air between them. The next morning, Zariah rose quietly. She found the coffee maker near the minibar, pushed the buttons until it worked, and placed a hot mug on the desk where Sterling's laptop sat closed. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't slam the door when she left either. Sterling stared at the untouched mug for several minutes after she was gone. Then, finally, he took a sip and said to himself, well, that was new. Have you ever ended up in the wrong place, only to realize it was exactly where you needed to be? Let us know your most unexpected twist in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story so far, like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories right here on Mr. Charles Stories. The sun had barely crested over the Charleston skyline when Sterling Cole sat up in bed, staring at the space where Zariah had slept. She was gone. The pillow was fluffed, the robe folded neatly at the foot of the bed, and the only trace she had been there at all was the cooling cup of black coffee on his desk. No note, no name, no drama. Sterling blinked once, then pushed the sheets aside and stood up. His schedule was packed. Calls with the Singapore team, finalizing inspection, documents for the hotel's upcoming expansion, and reviewing an investor pitch. Still, he found himself glancing again at the cup before he left. It was a small thing, but it lingered. Meanwhile, down the hall and through the service exit, Zariah Lane stepped out into the cool morning air with her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. She hadn't slept well. The bed was comfortable, sure, but sharing a room with a complete stranger, especially one with that kind of presence, had kept her body tense all night. He hadn't said much, didn't touch her, didn't make a move. But he'd stayed awake too. She could hear it in the stillness, the quiet sighs, the occasional shift of his weight on the mattress. And when he answered her question with that single word, no, it had stuck in her chest longer than it should have. She didn't know who he was, and honestly, she didn't want to. At the front desk, Kyla looked up from her monitor and gasped, Z. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Zariah raised a hand. Don't. It's fine. I survived. No, I mixed up the room keys. I didn't double-check the occupancy list. You were supposed to be in 409. I gave you Mr. Cole's room. Zariah paused. Mr. Cole? Kyla nodded quickly. Sterling Cole. He's a big deal. Owns the hotel group. You didn't know? Zariah blinked. He didn't say anything. Just looked like some corporate guy who hated company. He probably is that guy, but still. He's like billionaire level. Zariah's eyebrows lifted slightly. So, I accidentally slept in a billionaire's bed, technically beside him. They both stared at each other, then laughed. Quiet, breathy, stunned laughs. Zariah shook her head. Well, add that to my list of strange life events. Kyla leaned over the counter. So, was he mean? Zariah thought about it. No, just quiet. Like the kind of man who doesn't speak unless there's a reason. Sounds about right. Across the city, Sterling was already dressed in a tailored navy suit and sitting in a private conference room near the spa wing. His assistant, Troy, was going over next week's logistics. After Charleston, you're due in Dallas, then Miami, and then back to New York. Sterling tapped his pen against the edge of his folder, distracted. Push Dallas to next month. Swap Miami with Denver. You sure? That'll shift the architect's walkthrough. Let them wait. Troy tilted his head. Everything okay? Sterling nodded, too quickly. But as soon as his assistant left, he found himself glancing again at the notes in front of him, and realizing he'd read the same line 4 times without processing it. Her voice, soft, almost cautious, echoed in his head. You okay? No. Why had he answered like that? Why had it felt easier to tell the truth to a stranger in the dark than anyone else in the daylight? Later that afternoon, Zariah stood behind the counter at the furniture outlet where she worked part-time. A couple argued in front of the recliners over whether grey or teal was the better accent color. Zariah smiled politely and guided them toward a third option. But her thoughts kept drifting. Not about the man, not directly. More about what he'd said, or didn't say. She had met a lot of cold people in her life. Bosses, supervisors, former landlords. But this was different. There was something about Sterling's silence that didn't feel dismissive. It felt heavy, like he was carrying something and didn't know how to set it down. By evening, she was back in her small apartment, mostly dried out now. The repair guy had patched the pipe, but her mattress was still water-stained, and her clothes smelled faintly of mildew. She tossed her duffel on the floor, changed into pajamas, and stared at her dead laptop. There were emails to respond to, a design project she was supposed to submit to a local startup cafe, and no way to finish it. Zariah let her head fall into her hands. Great. First a broken ceiling, then a wrong room, now a broken future. She laughed once, low and bitter. If there was ever a time to give up, it was now. But she wouldn't, because she never had. The next morning, Sterling Cole opened the hotel app and scrolled through internal room audit reports. Room 509, key activity log showed a single entrance. Her name, Zariah Lane. No online profile, no social tags, just a basic check in record tied to the staff member Kyla, likely a favor. He closed the screen and stared out the window. He wasn't used to anyone leaving before he woke up. In fact, he wasn't used to sharing space with anyone at all. But she'd come in without knowing who he was, treated him like a man, not a title, and walked out just the same. No ask, no selfie, no business card. Sterling let out a quiet breath. He didn't know why it mattered, but it did. Zariah didn't sleep much the next night either. Her apartment was dry, but her thoughts weren't. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind kept circling back to the hotel, to the softness of the sheets, to the quiet breathing in the room that wasn't hers, to the moment his voice had filled the darkness with one raw word. No. There was something real in it. Pain, maybe, but she didn't know him. And she didn't want to waste time thinking about someone who lived a life far above hers. She had bills, overdue rent, and no working laptop. Her future needed her full attention, not a man she'd never see again. Still, something lingered. Meanwhile, inside his private suite on the top floor, Sterling Cole adjusted. His cufflinks as his assistant Troy re-entered with the updated schedule. Charleston's site visit pushed to 5 p.m. The decorators need more time to stage the third-floor model room. And the investor call? Still locked for 7. But the firm rep from Venice dropped. Want me to find a replacement? Sterling waved it off. Later, Troy paused, studying him. You've been different since yesterday. Sterling looked up, more distracted, or less hostile. Hard to tell. Sterling smirked faintly, which was rare for him. Maybe I just slept better than usual. You shared a room with someone, didn't you? Sterling's eyes narrowed. I reviewed the logs. Only one unauthorized key accessed your room. Female. Stafflink check-in. Her name was Troy, Sterling cut in, firm but calm. Stop talking. Troy nodded, lips sealed. Sterling wasn't angry, but he wasn't sharing either. Back at the furniture outlet, Zariah was finishing her shift when her co-worker Bree nudged her at the register. Someone just walked in. Total boss energy. Real tall. Looks like his life's in grayscale. Zariah didn't even glance up. If he asks for velvet chairs, direct him to section 3. Too late. He's already asking for you. Zariah blinked, then looked. Sterling Cole stood near the lounge chair display, dressed down in jeans and a light jacket. Still clean cut, still out of place. Her heart did something stupid in her chest. She took a breath and walked over. You lost again? Looking for a seat, he said evenly. Figured you'd know the best ones. She raised an eyebrow. You came all the way here. For a chair? No, he said, voice quiet. For the person who left before sunrise. Zariah glanced around. Bree was watching from the counter, eyes wide. She folded her arms. I figured you wouldn't notice. I did. Silence. Then he gestured toward a nearby model sofa. Can we sit? Zariah hesitated, then nodded. They walked over and sat, her on one end, him on the other. Space between them, but the air felt charged. I didn't mean to take up space that night, she said first. You didn't. You looked like you'd rather sleep next to a cactus. I've had worse roommates, he offered. I'm sure. They both chuckled. Then quiet settled again. Zariah finally asked the thing she'd been wondering since the moment he walked in. Why are you here? Sterling looked at her. Not rushed, just honest. Because I haven't stopped thinking about the night someone offered me coffee without expecting anything in return. Her throat tightened slightly. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me. More silence. Zariah looked down at her chipped nails. You're not like I expected. How did you expect me? Rude, arrogant, full of yourself. And now? Quiet, tired, a little lost. Sterling's mouth twitched. You're not wrong. She tilted her head. And you? What did you expect of me? To leave without a trace. Like most people do. Zariah looked at him for a long time. I don't leave traces, but I don't forget people either. He didn't stay long. Just long enough to ask her if she still wanted to finish that design project she mentioned. She blinked. I mean, yeah. But my laptop drowned. Sterling pulled out a sleek card from his wallet and handed it to her. You design. I'll make sure you can. She frowned, not taking it. Is this a job offer? No, it's a lifeline. You choose if you want to take it. He stood, nodded once, and left without another word. Zariah stared at the card in her hand for a long time. It had no title, no company name, just a number and a name. Sterling Cole. Zariah sat at the tiny fold-out table in her apartment, staring at the card Sterling left behind. Her borrowed laptop refused to turn on. She tried everything, air drying, tapping the keys, holding her breath as she pressed the power button. Still nothing. The irony made her want to laugh. She finally had time, inspiration, and even a solid lead from an actual business owner, but no way to execute the design proposal for the cafe downtown. She glanced back at the card. It felt heavier than it looked. Still, she didn't call. She wouldn't let herself be the girl who ran after a man just because he wore a fancy watch and said kind things. She'd survived too much to risk needing someone again. But then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. You still design? SC. She stared at the message, then typed back, not without a working laptop. Another buzz. Come to the hotel lounge tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring your ideas. She didn't reply, but she showed up. The next day, Zariah walked into the Golden Pelican through the main entrance. This time, no back door, no water-drenched clothes. She wore black slacks and a soft cream blouse, simple but clean. Her natural curls were pulled into a puff, and her nerves were fighting her every step. Sterling was already there. He sat alone at a two-top table near the window, sipping black coffee. Still quiet, still unreadable. He stood when she approached, then gestured for her to sit. "Didn't know if you'd come," he said. "Didn't know if you'd really be here. I usually mean what I say." She nodded, pulling a small notepad from her bag. No screen, so I sketched. Sterling leaned forward, surprisingly interested. He looked at each page carefully. Hand-drawn renderings of seating arrangements, counter layouts, color themes. "You did this freehand? Didn't have a choice. You work fast." "I've always had to." He looked at her. Really looked. "That's not a complaint," she added quickly. "It's a skill," he said simply. They sat in silence for a moment. The kind that was steady, not awkward. "You're not what I expected either," Zariah said finally. "How so?" "Most men with money lead with it." "You didn't." Sterling shrugged. "Money's only loud when it has nothing else to say." That earned a real smile from her. Half an hour later, she stood to leave. "I appreciate the time. I didn't come expecting anything." Sterling slid an envelope across the table. "There's a new laptop inside the suite on the 4th floor. Room 417. It's yours for as long as you need." Zariah blinked. "Why are you doing this?" He paused. "Because sometimes one night is enough to know someone's different. You didn't ask for anything. That told me everything. What if I say no? Then you walk out. I won't follow." Zariah looked at the envelope. "Room 417, huh?" Sterling gave a half smile. "Don't worry, I'm not in it." That evening, she stood at the door of room 417 for a long time before sliding in the keycard. Inside, a mid-range suite, not as grand as 509, but still beautiful. A laptop sat on the desk, silver, new, untouched. Zariah stared at it for a long time before sitting down. She opened the lid. It booted instantly. No passwords, no tags, no restrictions. Just a note on the keyboard. "Design something that changes your life. SC." Zariah sat with the new laptop in her lap, fingers hovering above the keyboard. For a moment, she didn't move. It had been years since she'd owned anything this new. Every laptop she ever used was second-hand or borrowed. This one was hers, even if she hadn't paid for it. Not yet. A quiet voice in her head whispered, "Don't let this become another thing someone gave you that you couldn't keep." But she shut that thought down. Not this time. This wasn't a handout. It was a seed. Over the next few days, Zariah worked like her future depended on it. Because it did. She completed the cafe pitch. Then she took photos of her sketches, scanned in mood boards she had, tucked in a notebook for months, and built a small digital portfolio. Sterling didn't text, didn't call. He didn't need to. His silence wasn't distance. It was trust. She wasn't sure how she knew that, but she did. Across town, Sterling was in a video call with 2 board members when Troy knocked lightly and entered his office. "You've got an update on the Charleston boutique remodel request." Sterling nodded toward his laptop. "Send it to my personal folder." Also, Zariah Lane emailed a PDF labeled Sample Portfolio. He looked up slowly. Troy cleared his throat. "I didn't open it." "Thought you might want to." Sterling clicked into his inbox once the call ended. There it was. Simple subject line, as promised. No body text, no fluff. He opened the file. Page after page of polished, thoughtful, warm design. The kind of creativity that felt lived in, not forced. This wasn't someone trying to impress. It was someone expressing. He smiled without realizing it. 2 mornings later, Zariah received an email from a downtown Charleston cafe called Grove and Grind. "We saw your mock-up and we're interested. Could you meet next week to discuss design options?" Her eyes welled up. That was the first real opportunity she'd had since graduating community college. She whispered, "Thank you," though no one was around. But later that night, she typed a short message. "Zariah, I got a client. First one. Just wanted you to know. No reply came for hours. Until this one. Sterling. I never had a first client. Only a first failure. Yours is better. That was all he wrote. But it made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. The next time she saw him wasn't at the hotel. It was at the pier. She was there with her sketchpad, getting inspired when she noticed him standing near a railing, coffee in hand, staring out at the water. No suit, no assistant, just a man and the ocean. She walked over slowly, planning a great escape. She asked. He glanced at her, gave a rare smile. You found me. Not hard to spot a billionaire who dresses like he forgot he's rich. He chuckled. I like the quiet here. Same. They stood side by side for a while. Then she said, You don't talk about your sister anymore. He looked down. That doesn't mean I've forgotten. Of course not. I just stopped leading with my grief. Zariah nodded. That's growth. Or maybe just exhaustion. He smiled again. Maybe both. Before they parted, he turned to her. You're doing something most people are scared of. What's that? Starting over. With no guarantees. Zariah looked at him, steady and sure. I never had guarantees, but I've always had grit. He looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, That's why I knew giving you that laptop wouldn't be a waste. Have you ever had someone believe in you before you believed in yourself? Let us know your story in the comments. And if this part moved you, like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what's next in Mr. Charles' stories. The cafe meeting went well. Zariah sat across from the owners of Grove and Grind, an older couple in their early 50s who ran the space like it was their second home. They didn't care that she didn't have a degree from a big-name design school. They cared that she listened. She showed them 3 layout mock-ups, explained why she suggested soft lighting, locally sourced wood, and muted coastal tones. She described a community table in the center to draw in freelance workers, a wall of plants, a flexible counter-design to accommodate mobile orders. By the end, the wife turned to her husband and said, She gets it. She sees it how we see it. They hired her on the spot. Zariah smiled, shook their hands, walked out into the sunlight, and let herself exhale. No loan, no begging, no favors. This one? She earned. That same evening, she returned to the Golden Pelican, not to stay, but to return the laptop. She carried it in a tote, with a note tucked inside the case. Thank you for the start. I can carry the rest now. Z. But when she reached the front desk, Sterling was standing there already. As if he knew. Zariah froze mid-step. He turned slowly, hands in his pockets, eyes calm. Leaving something? He asked. She hesitated. I wanted to give this back. He stepped closer. Why? Because I don't need to owe anyone. Not even you. You don't. Then what do I call this? She asked, lifting the tote. A beginning. They stood outside on the terrace, the city lights flickering below and the air between them still but full. Zariah finally said, You know, I've met people with money before. None of them ever looked tired the way you do. He chuckled softly. That's because they don't carry it. They flash it. So, what are you carrying, Sterling? The silence stretched. He turned to face the water beyond the rail. You ever loved someone so much you'd trade your success just to see them laugh again? Zariah's throat tightened. Yes. My sister's name was Maeve. She was 24. Bright, messy, wild. She called me every week, always at inconvenient times. I'd silence her calls. Text. I'm busy. Talk later. Zariah stayed quiet. One night she asked for a ride. I had back-to-back investor calls. I said I'd send a driver. She said no, she'd drive herself. Half an hour later, I got the call. Zariah swallowed hard. Her voice came out soft. That's not your fault. I knew the route. I knew the curve where she crashed. I knew it was dangerous at night. I just didn't show up. You thought you had more time. Don't we all? He turned, eyes darker now, not with anger, but with truth. Ever since then, I've built more properties, signed more deals, made more money. But none of it filled the space she left. Zariah looked up at him. You don't talk about her much, do you? Not until you... She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She just said, maybe she'd want you to live better, not just richer. That landed. He nodded, slow and silent. Then she stepped closer. Thank you for helping me live better, even just by accident. It wasn't an accident. The hotel mix-up? That part, maybe. But staying in it, that was a choice. For the first time since they met, he looked completely open, raw, and so did she. But neither said what was circling between them. Not yet. The next night, Zariah didn't return to the hotel. She sat in her apartment with a sketchbook on her lap and a candle flickering on the windowsill. The laptop Sterling gave her now sat on her desk, still hers to use, but her hand wanted to draw instead. She started a new concept, not for a client, not for business, just for herself. A place of peace, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a reading corner, a deep blue wall with memories framed in gold. In the middle, 2 chairs angled toward each other, not a television. She labeled it Room 509, if it were home. That room, the one that started everything, wasn't just a hotel room anymore. It was a memory, a mirror, a shift in her story. And Sterling. He wasn't a stranger anymore either. He texted her around 11 p.m. Sterling, I think about her less at night now. You helped with that. Zariah, I wasn't trying to, but I'm glad. Sterling, dinner tomorrow? She stared at the screen for a while, then typed, Zariah, no suits, no reservations. Something normal. Sterling, I'll try. They met at a small diner off the marina the next evening. Zariah arrived first, sliding into a red leather booth and sipping on lemon water. Sterling showed up 5 minutes late, in jeans, a black sweater, and no assistant in sight. He looked human. Still sharp, still handsome, but less like a magazine spread and more like someone figuring things out. You followed instructions, she teased. I told you. I meant what I said. They ordered grilled salmon and mashed potatoes. Nothing fancy. The conversation came easier this time. No walls, no titles. You ever think about quitting it all? She asked. Every week. And why don't you? He thought for a second. Because there's still work to be done. I just don't know if I'm doing the right kind. Maybe you are. You just forgot what it's supposed to feel like. And you? He asked. Ever think about quitting? Every day, she admitted, smiling. But then I remember, I'm still the only person responsible for my dream, so I show up, tired or not. Sterling nodded slowly. That's rare. Not rare. Just not loud. After dinner, they walked along the sidewalk. No cameras, no headlines, just their shadows and the street lamps. Zariah glanced over. Do people ever make you feel like you can't have a normal life? All the time. Do you believe them? He looked at her, quiet for a moment. I used to. Now I'm not so sure. She smiled. Good. Because if the universe was crazy enough to put me in your bed by mistake, it might be telling you something. He laughed, an actual laugh, not the polite exhale he gave in meetings. So now you believe in hotel destiny? I believe in strange timing and open doors. And what if the doors closed again? She stopped walking and looked at him. When they reached her apartment building, she didn't invite him up. She didn't need to. Instead, she looked at him and said, some people come into your life with noise. You came in with silence. And for once, I'm not scared of that. Sterling looked down at her, something unreadable in his expression. You changed how I see the world. And you didn't even try to. I didn't need to, she whispered. He leaned down and kissed her. Slow, respectful, warm, not rushed, not empty, just right. Zariah didn't expect to see him again the next day. She figured Sterling would vanish into his world of meetings and deadlines. That's what men like him did. leave beautiful nights in the past, and move on like they never happened. But that afternoon, while she worked on mood boards in a quiet cafe, her phone lit up. "Sterling, I'm outside. Walk with me?" She blinked. He wasn't joking. Out the window, he stood beside a parked black SUV. No driver, no suit, just him. Zariah grabbed her notebook and slipped outside. "You don't strike me as a spontaneous type," she said. "I'm learning." They walked down King Street, passing bookstores, quiet diners, and street musicians playing old R&B tunes. For the first time, Sterling didn't look like a CEO. They ended up at the marina, sitting on a bench facing the docked sailboats. The sky was soft, tinged with early orange. "I used to think peace had to be earned," Sterling said, eyes on the water. "And now? Now I think it's something we have to let ourselves feel." Zariah leaned back on her palms. "I like that. You taught me that. With your quiet." She turned to him. "You know what I noticed about you?" "What?" "You don't fill silence just to avoid it. Most people do." "I used to," he said. "Now I just wait for the right words. And if they don't come, then I let the silence say it." Zariah smiled. "That's a gift." As the sun dipped lower, the breeze turned cooler. Sterling stood and offered his hand. "Come with me. One more walk." She hesitated, then took it. They ended up at the hotel again, room 509. He opened the door and waited, letting her choose. She stepped in, not because she felt pressured, but because it felt safe. Inside, the suite was untouched since her last stay. Same crisp sheets, same soft lighting. The air held the weight of memory. Zariah stood in the center of the room, arms folded. "Feels different." "That's because it is," Sterling said from behind her. She turned slowly. He stepped closer, but didn't touch her. "This isn't about what we did or didn't do that night. This is about what's still between us. Right now." "You sure?" "Yes." "Then come sit with me." They sat on the edge of the bed, knees barely touching. No rush, no fire, just warmth. Zariah exhaled, head tilting slightly toward his shoulder. "I don't want to be a beautiful memory. I want to be something real." Sterling looked at her with a softness she hadn't seen in him before. "You already are." She leaned into him. And this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't hesitant. It was full. No words were exchanged as they lay beside each other later, their bodies close, but the moment still wrapped in quiet. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about escape. It was about presence, about being seen. Zariah lay on her side, facing the wide hotel windows. The early morning light hadn't fully pushed through yet. Outside, Charleston's streets were still asleep. Inside room 509, everything was still, except her thoughts. Sterling slept behind her, quiet, steady breaths warming the space between them. He hadn't asked for anything last night, hadn't rushed, hadn't claimed. He simply showed up. And now, here they were, not tangled, but touching, bare skin beneath the covers. But the closeness wasn't about desire. It was about presence, stillness, safety. Zariah blinked slowly, eyes scanning the suite. Same walls, same furniture. But she wasn't the same woman who'd collapsed on that bed days ago. She turned gently, just enough to see his face. Sterling's expression was calm, peaceful even. The weight he always carried in his brow had softened. His jaw, always tense, was relaxed. She watched him like a secret. There was something beautiful about seeing a strong man at rest. Not guarded, not performing, just human. Zariah reached over and lightly brushed her thumb across the back of his hand. His fingers twitched, then his eyes opened, slow and warm. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. A few minutes later, Zariah slid out of bed. Sterling watched her move, wordless. She grabbed her things, dressed quietly, folded the hotel robe again like she had the first time. "You leaving again?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I have work." Designs. That cafe needs a full mood board by Friday. You're really doing it. Because someone gave me space to believe I could. Sterling sat up, still under the sheets. His voice was low. I wasn't trying to change your life. You didn't. You just gave me a mirror. She reached for the door, then paused. I'm not running, Sterling. I'm just showing up for myself. I know, he said. And when you're ready to do the same, I'll be wherever I need to be. She left the room without looking back. The door clicked shut. Sterling sat there in the quiet. He'd never shared a night like that before. Not with a woman who asked for nothing but honesty. Not with someone who left without looking back, and still made him want to follow. That afternoon, Zariah sat in a small co-working cafe with her sketchbook open and her laptop glowing. Her fingers moved fast across the trackpad, dragging textures, uploading photo references, refining her layout. She was in the zone, focused. But her mind kept drifting to the warmth of Sterling's hand on hers, his voice in the dark, the feeling of not being alone even when they said nothing. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't need to, but she knew this. What they had wasn't random. And whether he showed up again or not, room 509 would always mean something. It was the night she realized she deserved to be in rooms she once thought were too big for her. Zariah didn't hear from Sterling for 4 days. Not a call, not a text, not even one of his short, dry check-ins. At first, she brushed it off. She had work to focus on anyway. Grove and Grind needed updates. Color swatches were due. She still hadn't sourced the reclaimed oak wood she promised for the counter display. But by day 5, silence became something else. It wasn't about absence. It was about distance, and she'd known too much of that in her life to mistake it for anything else. She stood in her apartment that morning staring at the same silver laptop on her desk. It still held everything he'd helped her restart. It also held a truth she couldn't ignore. Sterling Cole had disappeared. Not publicly. His company was still active. His hotels still ran. His press mention still showed up on her newsfeed. But privately, emotionally, he'd gone quiet. Zariah closed the laptop. She wouldn't chase him. She wouldn't shrink for anyone, not even the man who'd once held her like he needed her heartbeat to sleep. That night, she stepped into the cafe and spotted Kyla wiping down a table. "Girl, I haven't seen you in a minute," Kyla said, eyebrows raised. "Everything okay?" Zariah forced a smile. "Yeah, just busy." Kyla leaned in closer. "Sterling Cole busy? Or real life busy?" Zariah gave a weak laugh. "That obvious? Z. You've been walking around like your playlist's stuck on heartbreak." Zariah sighed and sank into the booth. "We got close. I thought it was something real. Then he just vanished. You confront him? I'm not chasing a man who disappears. If he wanted to show up, he would." Kyla nodded slowly. "You're right. But also, maybe he's stuck in his own head. Men like that don't always know how to reach out. That's not my responsibility to fix." "Nope. But it's okay to miss what you thought was building." Zariah looked down at her hands. "I wasn't expecting forever. I was just hoping for honesty." Elsewhere, across the city, Sterling sat in a closed office suite, staring out over the Charleston skyline. He hadn't slept in 3 days. Not properly. His team thought he was working on a high-profile investor pitch. His assistant thought he needed space. But the truth was simpler. He didn't know how to reach back without messing it up. Zariah had stepped into his life quietly. And somehow, she'd made him feel human. He missed her laugh, her stillness, her eyes that didn't try to read his net worth like a menu. But he wasn't used to women who didn't wait for him. And now, she'd gone. And the silence between them? That was on him. By the end of the week, Zariah had finished her cafe project. The final mood board was printed, mounted, and delivered. The owners were thrilled. She walked out of their doors with a small check and a big smile. But the joy felt quiet, not empty, just muted. She didn't expect Sterling to be waiting on the sidewalk, and he wasn't. But part of her had hoped. Maybe he'd show. Maybe he'd say something. Anything. Instead, she tucked her check into her bag and went home alone. She didn't cry, but she didn't celebrate either. That night, she opened her sketchpad and flipped past pages of project notes, past the cafe designs, past the coastal layouts. She paused on a page she hadn't touched since that night in the hotel. Room 509, if it were home. A cozy redesign full of warmth and connection. 2 chairs facing each other. A soft yellow wall. Morning light spilling across a shared bookshelf. She traced her finger over the chairs she had drawn, one slightly turned toward the other. "You left before it ever turned all the way," she whispered. Then she closed the book. Across the city, Sterling sat in his penthouse alone. He hadn't returned to room 509 since that last night. He avoided it, like it might carry the sound of her voice still echoing in the walls. He'd stared at her contact more times than he could count, typed out messages, deleted them, wrote again, deleted again, until finally. He stopped running. He called her. Zariah was midway through reheating leftovers when her phone buzzed. She didn't expect to see his name, Sterling Cole. Her chest tightened. She almost didn't answer. But she did. "Zariah," his voice came through, low and careful. "You took your time." "I know." Silence. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I was trying to figure out how to come back without making it worse. And I realized disappearing did more damage than showing up scared." She didn't speak, so he kept going. "You didn't do anything wrong. You were real. You were patient. I panicked." "You don't owe me an apology," she said. "But you do owe me honesty. I want to see you." "To say what?" "That I never should have let you walk away thinking you were the only one who felt something." There it was. The first real thing he'd said in a week. Zariah didn't answer right away. She leaned back in her chair and let it settle. "Tomorrow," she finally said. "No speeches. Just show up. I will." The next day, she waited outside the cafe, not dressed up. No makeup, hair pulled into a soft bun. Just Zariah, the way she'd always been. A few minutes passed. Then Sterling walked around the corner. No driver, no suit, just him. And for the first time in days, she didn't feel like she was waiting. She felt like she was being met. Have you ever had someone pull away just when things got real? What did you do? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're still following Zariah and Sterling's journey, like this video and subscribe, more is coming. They didn't hug at first. Sterling stood a few feet from Zariah, hands in his pockets, eyes searching hers like he was still asking for permission to be there. Zariah tilted her head. "You showed up. I said I would." "You're late. I needed to make sure I wasn't coming empty." She looked at him, cautious. "What does that mean?" He stepped forward and handed her a slim envelope. Inside was a black invitation card with silver embossed text. "Charleston Rising Boutique Hotel Grand Reveal. Lead designer, Zariah Lane." She stared at the card, blinking, then looked up. "This is a joke. It's not. I didn't apply. I submitted your name." "Without asking?" "No," he said quietly. "Because you already earned it. I just moved the wall that was blocking the door." Zariah's throat tightened. "You're serious?" "I'm not always serious. But this?" He paused. "This is the realest thing I've done in years." They sat outside on a bench beside the fountain. Zariah held the card like it might vanish if she blinked. "You trust me to design your hotel? I trust your eye. I trust your taste. And I trust the way you see people. And what if I'm not ready? You are. What if I mess it up? Then we learn from it, together." She looked at him then. Really looked. The man who once couldn't say more than a few words without checking his watch. Now sitting still, steady, soft. "You know," she said, "you don't have to fix everything with your money." "This isn't a fix," he replied. This is a gift, not for what you did, for who you are. She exhaled, long and deep. This is big, Sterling. So are you. She blinked, not used to words like that from men like him. So what happens next? She asked. You take the job. You put your name on something permanent, and we see if we can build something that lasts, together or not. You'd be okay with that? I want what's good for you. Whether or not that includes me. Zariah stared ahead, the weight of those words sinking in. Later that evening, she sat in her apartment and laid the invitation on her desk. Next to it sat the laptop, the sketchbook, and her original notes titled Room 509, if it were home. That room wasn't just a mix-up anymore. It was the beginning of her becoming. And now she had a decision to make, not for love, not for validation, but for herself. The next morning, Zariah walked through the front doors of the Golden Pelican. Not as a guest, not as a mistake, but as the lead designer for its newest project. The front desk staff recognized her. One even smiled knowingly. She didn't stop. She walked straight to the elevator, head high, fingers clutching a leather folder filled with layout ideas and color samples. Her sketches were printed, her notes organized, and for once she wasn't second-guessing her presence. The elevator chimed. She stepped into the design briefing room on the 3rd floor, where a small team of project coordinators sat waiting. At the head of the table? Sterling. He didn't stand when she entered. He didn't make a show of it. He just nodded and said, Team, this is Zariah Lane. She's not here as a favor. She's here because she's the right one for the job. That was it. Simple. Direct. No explanation of who she was to him. She appreciated that more than he knew. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. Zariah presented her concepts with clarity. She answered questions, defended her design choices, and took feedback with calm professionalism. By the time it ended, the senior architect leaned across the table and said, We've worked with people with years more experience, but no one's delivered a vision this rooted in connection. You see people. That's what makes this work. Sterling said nothing the entire time, not until the room cleared. Then he walked up beside her and said quietly, You didn't need my name to carry you. You carried yourself. Zariah looked up at him, pride in her eyes. I know. You're proud of yourself. I'm finally starting to be. Later that night, Zariah sat in the quiet of her apartment. The invitation card sat on her desk beside a signed design contract. It was real now. No accident, no charity. She earned this. She reached for her phone and typed out a message. Zariah, thank you for the room key that changed everything. A minute passed. Then, Sterling, it wasn't the room, it was you. She smiled, but she didn't respond. Some things didn't need replies. Some truths just needed to land. The morning sun stretched across the Charleston skyline as Zariah stood on the balcony of the boutique hotel's rooftop. The view from up here was something she hadn't let herself enjoy before. Not because it wasn't beautiful, it was, but because for so long she hadn't felt like she belonged in high places. Now she did. The breeze lifted her curls gently as she looked down at her sketchpad, reviewing her final revisions. This project had grown beyond design. It had become proof that she could start from nothing, that she could be given an accidental opportunity and turn it into purpose. But beneath the pride, something else tugged. Sterling. He hadn't tried to kiss her again. He hadn't tried to make a move. Instead, he'd stayed close, respectfully, quietly, present. He showed up to meetings, nodded through her presentations, and never once tried to claim credit for opening the door for her. And yet, that space between them, the one they'd tried to ignore, was still there. Still heavy. She turned at the sound of the rooftop door clicking open. Sterling. Black slacks, open collar, no tie. Not polished. Just real. He walked over, hands in his pockets, and stopped a few feet from her. Didn't mean to interrupt, he said. You're not, she replied. He looked out at the view with her. You did it. She nodded. We're almost there. Final approval comes in tomorrow. He paused. No, I meant, you did it. You became someone they can't ignore. Zariah turned toward him. I was always that. They just didn't know yet. He smiled, something close to pride in his eyes. Fair. Silence settled between them, thicker now. Not tense, but charged, like they both knew this conversation couldn't wait any longer. Zariah exhaled. We never talk about what happened. That night? All the nights after. Sterling leaned against the railing, looking at her. You scared me, he admitted. Why? Because you didn't want anything from me. Not my name, not my money, not my help. You just wanted me to be present. And I didn't know how to do that. Zariah nodded slowly. And now? I still don't always know how. But I want to learn. She looked away. You disappeared. For days. After that night. I know. And I'll regret that for a long time. Not because of what it did to us, she said, meeting his gaze. But because of what it reminded me of. He straightened. What do you mean? I've been left before. By men who said the right things one day and disappeared the next. You weren't the first, but I thought you might be the last. Sterling stepped closer. I didn't leave because I stopped feeling. I left because I felt too much. Her eyes searched his face. You think that excuses it? No, he said. It explains it. Doesn't erase it. Zariah crossed her arms, but not in defense, more like she was holding herself steady. You don't get to drop in and out of my life based on how comfortable your emotions are. I'm not trying to. Then what are you doing, Sterling? Because I need to know before we go any further. He looked at her, jaw tense. I want to be in your life, fully, but I want to do it right. I want to respect your space, your work and your boundaries. I want to learn how to stay. Zariah's voice lowered. So stay, but mean it. He reached for her hand slowly. And this time, she didn't pull away. They walked along the rooftop's edge in silence, the kind of quiet that didn't feel heavy anymore. Zariah still held Sterling's hand. Not tightly, but not loosely either. It was enough. How long have you been this version of you? She asked. Sterling glanced over. Which version? The one that doesn't hide behind appointments and press releases. The one who knows how to stand still. He thought for a moment. Since you left room 509 the first time. Zariah gave a soft, surprised laugh. That long? I didn't know it then. I just knew something shifted. They stopped at a corner near a row of potted plants. The city lights behind them blinked like stars. Zariah looked up at him. You know I still don't need saving, right? I know. That's why I keep coming back. She nodded slowly. I don't want a man who sees me as a project. I want a partner, someone who understands I'm still figuring it out. Zariah, I don't want to fix you. I want to grow with you. There's a difference. She studied him. And what happens when I need space? When I shut down or go quiet? Then I wait outside your silence until you're ready to open it. The way he said it, without performance, without promises he couldn't keep, made her chest tighten. You think people like us can have something normal? She asked. I don't want normal. I want something real. Something that won't collapse under the weight of honesty. Zariah smiled, though her eyes were wet. You're not afraid anymore. I am, he admitted. But I'm walking toward you anyway. She looked down at their hands. And if I let you in again, I'm not doing it halfway. Then don't, he said. Let's build something from the truth up. A breeze moved between them. She leaned into him, resting her head lightly on his chest. His arms wrapped around her without hesitation. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't perfect. It was honest. And that was enough to begin again. Zariah returned to the boutique hotel site 2 days later, this time with a full design board in hand and a new calm in her chest. Something between them had shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. Sterling wasn't there when she arrived. That was fine. She had work to do. She reviewed the flooring samples. coordinated with the construction crew, walked through the unfinished hallways, visualizing where lighting fixtures would hang, where guests would pause and breathe. It felt good to move, to create, to belong. Halfway through her notes, her phone buzzed. A text from Sterling. Dinner? Not fancy. Just us. She smiled. Okay, but I picked the place. Deal. That night, they sat across from each other in a tucked-away booth at a casual seafood spot near the pier. The table was sticky, the napkins were thin, and the waitress called everyone baby without blinking. Zariah loved it. Sterling looked out of place and completely at home. They shared fried catfish and hush puppies, and neither of them brought up business, not once. Instead, they talked about childhood. He told her about growing up in Chicago, about how his parents were cold but structured. They never missed a school function, but also never asked how he felt afterward. She told him about her grandmother, about the way she made pancakes with cinnamon, and how she taught Zariah to press her clothes even when she had nowhere to go. She always said, Zariah recalled, "You don't dress for the day you're living. You dress for the one you're building." Sterling smiled. Smart woman, tough too. She didn't believe in tears. Thought softness was something you had to earn. He leaned forward. And did you? Zariah looked at him. I'm still learning. Later, they walked by the water. The waves lapped softly, and the moon hung low. Sterling didn't hold her hand, but his arm brushed hers now and then, and that was enough. You know what's wild? She said. What? How much we carry that no one ever sees. Sterling exhaled. Sometimes I think people don't want to see it, or they're afraid to, because if they do, they might have to admit they're carrying something too. He looked at her then, not with pity, not even affection, but with understanding. What are you still carrying, Zariah? She thought for a long time. The fear that one day this will all feel like a dream, like it never happened. He nodded. And me? I'm carrying the fear that one day I won't know how to keep something good without breaking it. She stopped walking. He did too. They turned to face each other. So, what do we do with all that fear? She asked. Maybe we set it down, one piece at a time, together, and for the first time, it felt like they might. They didn't rush the walk back. Zariah kept her pace steady, her breath even. Sterling matched it beside her, saying little, but not in a distant way, in a comfortable one. When they reached her apartment building, they stopped at the steps. He didn't ask to come in. She didn't invite him. Instead, she leaned against the railing, looking up at the sky. I always thought healing came with noise. Big moments. Grand closure, she said. Sterling looked up too. And now? Now I think it looks like this. Small steps, quiet choices. He nodded, turning toward her. I like quiet. She smirked. You wear it well. There was a pause, then he asked, What are you building now? Zariah looked down at her hands, then back up at him. Something that doesn't fall apart when people leave. He didn't flinch. Then I guess I'll just have to stay. That made her smile, gently, the kind of smile that said, maybe. He stepped down one stair, now slightly below her. Whatever comes next, I want to earn it. With you. Not because of the room key, not because of what I gave you, but because you gave me something I didn't even know I needed. Zariah studied him. And what's that? A chance to stop pretending I was fine. She reached forward, fingertips brushing his collar. You don't have to pretend with me. Not now, not ever. Sterling took her hand, pressed it to his chest. Then here. Start with this. They stood like that for a long time, not making promises, not planning too far ahead, just being. And for two people who had carried silence like armor, this kind of peace felt louder than any declaration. The next week moved faster than either of them expected. Final inspections were underway for the Charleston Boutique Hotel, and Zariah found herself juggling vendor calls, last-minute paint corrections, and questions from the architectural team about tile spacing. It was chaos. Beautiful, thrilling chaos. And she was at the center of it. Sterling kept his distance, but not in absence. In trust. He let her lead. He didn't hover. When she needed a signature, he signed. When she needed time, he gave it. And when she needed support, he didn't ask questions first. He just showed up. Zariah was standing in the main lobby of the nearly completed property, clipboard in hand, when her assistant Brittany leaned over and said, "You know he watches you when you're not looking." Zariah raised a brow. "Sterling?" Brittany grinned, like a man trying not to stare too long at the sun. Zariah laughed, shaking her head. "Don't start. Too late. You're his son, girl. Just let the man orbit." They both chuckled, but the thought stayed with her. Later that evening, she stood alone in the newly designed guest suite, room 509. Yes, she had requested that number. No. She hadn't told Sterling. The layout was hers now. Soft earth tones, textured fabrics, locally crafted artwork, and a window seat made for morning coffee. It didn't look like the room she'd once collapsed into by mistake. It looked like a room someone had chosen to be in. She ran her hand along the edge of the windowsill and smiled. Behind her, she heard a soft knock. She turned. Sterling stood in the doorway, not saying anything. She lifted an eyebrow. "You followed me. I asked where you were." They pointed. He stepped inside slowly. "You chose this number." "Of course I did." He looked around. "It doesn't feel like a mistake anymore." Because it wasn't. They stood quietly, the soft overhead lights casting golden warmth across the room. Sterling walked to the edge of the bed and sat, running a hand across the fabric. "You built something beautiful. I built something honest." He nodded, then looked up at her. "You ready for what comes next?" She crossed her arms gently. "You mean the opening? Or whatever this is between us?" "Both." Zariah exhaled. "I'm not sure. But I know I won't run from either." He stood, closing the distance slowly. "Then let's figure it out, room by room. No rush, no script, no pretending." "None." She smiled. "Then, let's begin here." The next morning, the sun peeked through the large windows of the hotel's conference suite. Zariah stood at the display board she'd sketched all night, highlighting layout, flows, mood boards, and structural notes for the Charleston renovation. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. Sterling sat across the room, legs crossed, arms folded, watching quietly. "This is the proposal," she said. Voice even. "The concept pulls from local architecture using natural textures like reclaimed wood, coastal sandstone, and light linen. I want guests to feel both the old soul of Charleston and the modern ease of this brand." The room fell silent. One executive cleared his throat. "It's clean, bold, too." Another nodded. She captured the spirit. "I like it." Sterling still hadn't spoken. Zariah's eyes flicked to him. He finally leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "It's not what I expected," he said slowly. "It's better." Her spine relaxed. As the meeting ended and the others filed out, Sterling stayed seated. Zariah gathered her boards, about to exit, when he called her name. She turned. "Yes?" "I meant what I said. This design is exceptional. You've outdone yourself." "Thank you," she replied, unsure whether to linger or leave. He stood, walking toward her. "I want you to take the lead on this. Not just the concepts, but the execution, the team, the direction." Zariah blinked. "You want me to run the project?" "I trust your eye, your instincts. I've been around enough talent to know when it's real." Her breath caught, but she nodded. "Then, I'll give it everything I have." Sterling stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And not because we shared a night in room 509. This is about your work." Zariah smiled faintly. "I know." He glanced around the now empty space. "Walk with me." They strolled down the quiet hotel corridor, then into the garden terrace. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves just beginning to change. I was afraid seeing you again would undo me, he said. But it didn't? He paused. No. It clarified me. She looked away, gathering her thoughts. I don't want pity, Sterling, or confusion. If you're not sure, I am sure. His voice was firm. That night changed me. You changed me. I didn't do anything, she whispered. You did, he said. You listened. You stayed. You didn't ask for anything and still gave me peace. Zariah met his gaze. So what now? I don't want to force anything, he said. But if you're open, I'd like to know what this could be, outside of the hotel, outside of work. She exhaled slowly. Sterling, I don't know how to be in your world. I don't come from it. Then let's build one together. Not yours, not mine, ours. Her eyes filled, but she blinked quickly, steadying her voice. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. Every word. A pause settled between them. Then she smiled. Okay. He grinned back. Okay? Zariah nodded. Okay. They stood there for a moment longer, not touching, but closer than ever. Later that night, as she reviewed renovation emails in her suite, Sterling knocked once before entering. He held a takeout bag and a bottle of wine. No restaurants tonight, he said. Just us. Floor picnic? She laughed. You. He knelt, spreading napkins and containers across the carpet. I'm full of surprises. They ate shrimp tacos and sweet potato fries, sharing bites and stories. I used to think happiness was winning. Dominating, he admitted. Now, I'm realizing it's quieter. Smaller. Zariah leaned back on her elbows. Like this? He reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Exactly like this. And in that room, no numbers, no contracts, no miscommunications. Two people who never expected to cross paths began writing something they both quietly hoped would last. Not because it was perfect, but because it felt like home. The sun hit Charleston's rooftops with a golden glow the morning Zariah stepped off the train. She hadn't slept much the night before. Between the nerves, the packed bag by her door, and the invitation from Cole Developments, her mind had barely shut off. The ride from the station to the project site was short. The boutique hotel was still wrapped in scaffolding and blueprints. Her portfolio clutched to her chest, Zariah walked through the front lobby, where workers buzzed like bees. A sharp-dressed assistant greeted her. Miss James? Right this way. Zariah followed, heart pounding. She didn't expect the meeting room to be so bright or quiet. But nothing prepared her for what stood at the head of the table. Sterling Cole. He wore a navy jacket over a crisp white shirt, no tie. Polished, but somehow softer. His eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Zariah froze. He took one step toward her, and then another. Everyone else in the room faded away. I thought I'd lost you, he said. She blinked, grounding herself. You didn't even look. I was looking the whole time, he said. I just didn't know how to say it. The room shifted. Her hands relaxed. Her spine straightened. A project manager spoke. Shall we begin the walk through? Zariah nodded. She wasn't here for a reunion. She was here to work, to build. Still, as they walked through each floor, reviewing plans and measurements, she felt Sterling's presence a few steps behind. He wasn't interfering, but he wasn't gone either. He asked questions, listened when she explained lighting concepts and design flow. She was in her element, and he watched with a quiet admiration that didn't need words. At the rooftop terrace, the afternoon breeze tugged at her blazer. Sterling finally spoke again. I had no idea you were coming. I had no idea you owned this property. Fate, maybe. She rolled her eyes. No, Sterling. It was design. Mine, he smiled. Point taken. They stood at the edge, looking out over Charleston's skyline. Her fingers brushed the metal railing. His were close, but not touching. I read about your latest projects, he said. You're building more than spaces. I'm trying. You're succeeding. Zariah turned to face him fully. Why am I here, Sterling? He didn't hesitate. Because you earned it. And because I'm not letting another moment pass without saying this. I want a real chance. If you do. Her breath caught. The rooftop faded. The scaffolding disappeared. And in that pause, the right room no longer felt like an accident. It felt like destiny finding its mark. The final walkthrough of the Charleston property wasn't supposed to feel this personal. Zariah had spent weeks working on it, sketching mood boards, liaising with the construction team, making sure the textiles reflected warmth without pretense. But standing in the heart of the newly renovated lobby with Sterling by her side, it didn't feel like a project. It felt like proof that she was here. That she mattered. She pointed at a set of pendant lights, their golden glow bouncing off reclaimed wood. They reminded me of you. Clean lines, classic, a little closed off, but warm once they're on. Sterling chuckled under his breath, folding his arms. Are you comparing me to a light fixture? I am, she said proudly. Take it as a compliment. You were kind in the dark. He glanced at her, holding her gaze a second longer than necessary. I was trying not to break. That night, I mean. You didn't know, but you kept me from cracking. Zariah shrugged gently. You kept me from drowning too. You just didn't know it yet. After the tour, the meeting with the board was quick. The proposal passed without opposition. The boutique hotel chain would expand under Zariah's design lead and Sterling's capital. It was a business deal on paper, but neither of them looked at it that way. Walking out, Sterling held the door open. Zariah slowed, feeling the Charleston breeze wash over her. You hungry? He asked. She nodded. But not for anything fancy. I'm still me, you know. He smiled. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. They found a quiet diner with no reservations, just tables covered in checkered cloth. Sterling ordered grilled cheese. Zariah got tomato soup. They didn't talk business, or grief, or regrets. They talked about little things. How Zariah still couldn't sleep without white noise. How Sterling hated airplane food. How she dreamed of opening a second studio in New Orleans. How he sometimes missed his sister's laugh at random moments, in the middle of perfectly normal days. After the meal, they walked. No destination, just the soft rhythm of their footsteps sinking along cobbled streets. Eventually, they paused outside her hotel. Zariah turned to him. This wasn't supposed to happen, you know. Room 509. Sterling nodded. It wasn't. But I'm glad it did. She hesitated, keys in hand. What are we doing, Sterling? He stepped closer, voice steady. We're making space. For something real. I don't want to miss you again. Not because of time zones or fear or ego. Zariah looked up at him. And if I say I'm scared, I'll wait. I'll stay. I'll prove that you can count on me. That I'll show up, not vanish. She didn't say anything right away. Then slowly, she unlocked the door, pushed it open, but didn't step inside. Then stay tonight, she whispered. Not as a mistake. Not as an escape. Stay as a man who wants to try. He didn't need to be asked twice. They stepped in together. No suitcases, no check-ins. Just two people who'd once been in the wrong room, finally stepping into the right one, by choice. As the door closed behind them, the city faded, and everything else, every what-if, every almost, every detour, fell away. Because love doesn't always come wrapped in clarity. Sometimes it comes in confusion, in mistakes, in hotel robes and half-brewed coffee. But when it's real, it stays. And tonight, they did. If you've made it this far, then you felt something. Maybe you saw her pain. Maybe you recognized the way she kept holding on, even when everything in her told her to walk away. Or maybe you saw yourself in the silence, in the waiting, in the hope that someone would finally choose you without conditions. Let me ask you this. Have you ever loved someone so deeply you forgot who you were trying to become? Have you ever given pieces of yourself away, hoping they'd hold them carefully, only to watch them drop you over and over. That's what this story was about. It wasn't just about a hotel mix-up, or about a billionaire falling in love. It was about two people, one who had everything but couldn't feel, and one who had nothing but gave everything she had. And in the end, it wasn't wealth, power, or status that saved them. It was truth. It was vulnerability. It was choosing love, even when it wasn't easy. So here's what I want you to do. If this story touched you, take a second to hit that like button. Maybe there's a woman out there tonight who feels forgotten. Maybe there's a man who finally sees what he did wrong. Maybe someone needs this exact story to believe in redemption again. Share it. Comment below. What part of the story hit you the hardest? Would you have walked away? Or stayed like she did? Your voice matters here. We don't just tell stories. We build a family. One where healing, love, and second chances exist for all of us. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Subscribe and join us. Turn on that bell so you never miss a story that might just reflect your life, your past, or your future. This channel is more than fiction. It's about real emotions, real lessons, and real people like you who believe that even when life breaks us, love can still rebuild us. So stay. Grow with us. And remember, sometimes the people who enter your life by accident are the ones who change it forever. See you in the next one.